right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again to your weekly NoCD webinar. Thanks to Medina for being here last week to cover for me. I had a little surgery. See a little spot right there, a little basal cell carcinoma. Fun times, of course. Yeah. So I was out and stitched up and everything, so was unable to be here and speak really last Wednesday. So healing up nicely, I think, and they got it all. So no worries or anything of that nature, and we're good to go. So let's jump into things and kind of see where we're at. So number one, could you please tell me, can OCD change over time with obsessions? Yes. For instance, I'm afraid of something, I do an ERP on it, then the obsession changes. Of course. OCD loves to jump around. In fact, by the time most people come to see me, they're on maybe their fourth or fifth iteration of their OCD. It might have started as washing, and then it was checking, and then it was, what if I hurt someone, and now it's what if I'm going to hell, right? And so it's not uncommon to see that. It's also not uncommon that every time a new one comes up, the other ones just kind of fade into the background and seem to disappear, because now this one is suddenly the most important thing in the world, even though the last one was the most important and awful, horrible thing in the world, suddenly, until this one appeared. And now that one is easy compared to this one, kind of thing. OCD loves to do that. Don't be surprised sometimes if you do treatment for OCD and you realize that now that you've worked on this thing, some of those ones that in the past were the worst thing ever, but were replaced by something else, kind of percolate back up again. That's what they like to do. You know, OCD likes to say to you, hey, what about this thing over here? And get you to think you don't know how to work on that one. When you do, you apply exposure and response prevention to that, just like you do for all the other things that you've worked on as well too. Sometimes people show up and they say, hey, we worked on this thing, but not on this thing, so I don't know what to do for this thing. I'll say, of course you know what to do for this thing. You just have to apply ERP to that in the same way that we applied it to this other stuff. And when you do that, you get better, right? So that's important. So tonight's webinar brought to you by NoCD. NoCD, a downloadable app. So please feel free to go to our website, www.nocd.com, and check us out, get the app. And we have teletherapy available through the NoCD app as well. So we have therapists in all states, and we're in other countries as well too. We see people in Australia, we see people in Canada, we see people in the UK. So please feel free to reach out to us at NoCD, talk to our care team, do a free call with our care team to see if NoCD therapy might be right for you. And we continue to get more and more insurance companies coverage for those of you here in the US as well. So we hope to chat with you and to see what we can do with you for NoCD therapy. And remember, NoCD therapy can be therapy for life, right? Once you're with your NoCD therapist, we want to make sure that you get the results that you want and that we help you maintain those results. So you can stick with us for as long as is necessary. And we're going to make sure that we are there to be the help that you need in whatever it is that's going on. All right, let's get back into questions. Lisa Sim says, I've contamination OCD and constantly feel like I have to use hand sanitizer. But when I try to put off giving into my obsession, sometimes it takes hours for that one thought to go away. Any suggestion on what to do when this happens on a daily basis all day long, because constantly using hand sanitizer dries out and cracks my hands to the point that they start bleeding? Yes. So Lisa, here's the deal. You're kind of saying that there comes a point where I just can't take it anymore and then I give it. Once OCD knows that that's the case, OCD is going to take you to that point and say, just brought this to the level now where I have to give it, right? And so OCD is really smart. OCD is amazingly smart. And OCD knows what your breaking point is, quote unquote, and will bring you there so that you will then give in, because OCD doesn't care if your hands are bleeding when you're applying the hand sanitizer, right? OCD says, oh, hand sanitizer, so good. Thank you so much, so good. And after you're done with the hand sanitizer, then OCD says, oh my God, your hands are cracked and bleeding. Put more hand sanitizer on. So here's the interesting thing. And this is a great representation for about how OCD works. OCD tells you to use more hand sanitizer. But using more hand sanitizer causes your hands to become actually more susceptible to germs, because the more you use it and the more your hands crack and peel and bleed, the more likely a germ can actually get in. And when OCD sees your hands and they're cracked and peeling and bleeding, OCD says, holy cow, your hands are cracked and bleeding. Germs could get in there. You better use more hand sanitizer. So the very thing that you do to satisfy OCD also becomes the thing that fuels OCD. And I said this all the time, but I'm going to say it again. OCD is the koala of disorders. What do I mean by that? Koalas eat one thing, eucalyptus leaves. That's all they eat. They eat eucalyptus leaves. That's it. They don't eat anything else. OCD eats compulsions. Okay. What keeps OCD alive? Compulsions. What starves OCD? No compulsions. Giving in after a while is doing a compulsion, and therefore feeding OCD. Now it gets to that point, Lisa, you might say, yeah, but at that point it's so difficult and it's unbearable and I can't deal with it. And as long as OCD knows that that's the case, that's where OCD is going to take you. Okay? OCD is not stupid. OCD knows what you think your breaking point is and brings you to it. Now, what you have to realize, Lisa, is that you could survive even though you feel as bad as you feel. Because remember, sometimes people will say, but it feels so real. Why does it feel so real? And as I say all the time in this weekly webinar, it has to feel real. Because if it didn't feel real, I wouldn't have a job. There would be no need for me to treat anybody if OCD didn't feel real. You would just say, oh, it's just that stupid OCD. Whatever. I don't need to do anything about it. I'll just let it go because it's that dumb old OCD. No, OCD has to feel real. In fact, look at where OCD is kind of located in the brain, in the midbrain, in the area where the emotion center of the brain is. Why do we do exposure and response prevention therapy for people? Because it targets the area of the brain that isn't the talk part of the brain. You can't talk someone out of OCD. And when I try to do that, I'm not hitting OCD where it is. OCD would love to debate and talk with me all day long. I'll never win the debate. I'll always lose. So I have to expose people to things that they are afraid of and that are uncomfortable in order for them to learn I can handle it. But you have to go through the discomfort. Now, let's take it out of OCD for a minute. Imagine you were in detox. You have an alcohol problem, Lisa, let's say. And suddenly you are put into detox. And now there is no more alcohol. You might choose to leave detox because it's so uncomfortable, right? Because you're having sweats and you have a fever and you have diarrhea and you're shaking and you're cold and then you're hot and you feel like you're going to die because alcohol withdrawal just feels absolutely, absolutely horrible. Imagine, Lisa, if on the unit they had a bar and you could go and take a drink so that you could stop all of those withdrawal symptoms because you've said, this is as bad as I can feel. I can't feel any worse than this, and I won't let it get any worse than this, so I'm going to go have a drink, which means now I'm feeling better because I had the drink, but it also means my alcoholism is now going to continue and be worse because now I'm still drinking. The same applies to OCD. You do a compulsion, you feed the OCD, and when you feed the OCD, it gets worse because compulsions are the food of obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Hope you get that. because that's the key to all of this stuff, is that compulsions are the food of OCD. Dr. McGrath, that's me. I experience false memory OCD. I've been trying to accept uncertainty and discomfort, but it's really difficult. I'm scared that I'll always feel guilty or like a bad person. Can you help me? Sure. Sit with the feeling that you're a bad person and that you're uncomfortable until it passes, until you're able to recognize, look at that. I can think I'm a bad person. I can feel as if I'm a bad person, but I have no actual proof that I'm a bad person. Well, that's cool. Imagine walking into court and said, Your Honor, I'd like you to convict me. I think I'm a murderer. Okay? Tell me what you've done. I don't know that I've done anything, but I think I might be. You would not get convicted. You would not be found guilty of something. But Your Honor, I really feel it. I really think it. Right? OCD plays on you. OCD pulls at emotions. OCD pulls at whatever thoughts it can and throws them at you because it knows that they're frightening. It pulls at any images that it can and throws them at you because it knows they're frightening. It pulls at any urges that it can and throws them at you because it knows they're frightening. And what do? You have a choice. You say, oh, I can't handle that. I got to do a compulsion. Or, I'm going to have to sit with that and recognize that just because OCD threw that at me doesn't mean that it can harm me. Many of you are aware of the example I use in this webinar, where I can leave this webinar right now, go across the street and throw a Molotov cocktail at my neighbor Dave's house, then go into the middle of the street, poop in a bag, light it on fire, put it on the porch of my neighbor Josh's house, ring his doorbell, he'll come out, stamp on it because it's on fire, but then get poop on his shoe, and I'll laugh. And then I'll come home and there'll be some geese flying over my house and I'll shoot them, and now there'll be some dead geese in my front yard. And then I'll come back to the webinar. Now, I can't prove that I will or won't do that, right? I don't think I will. I have no plans to. I don't know that I have the means to do all of that even, but it is a possibility, right? Now, what happens in OCD? Possibility equals probability. And when we have OCD, we believe, well, this is possible. So therefore, it's 100% probable that it's going to occur. And what I want you to realize is that you might have a memory. I think your name is Ucille. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correct. But just because we have a memory of something, OCD loves to twist memories, right? And that's why it's called false memory OCD, right? Or sometimes real event OCD, where I think I remember this thing. And what if I don't remember it? Or what if I had done this or that instead? And how can I be sure and know and all these kinds of things? Well, let's remember what the name of OCD is. The nickname of OCD is the doubting disorder. And because it is the doubting disorder, I can't ever give you enough information for you to accept and say, oh, cool, awesome, thank you. You've given me plenty of information. That's absolutely wonderful. I now no longer have doubt. Okay? Doesn't work that way. It is all about being able to allow for the fact that there is doubt in your life and that we can accept the fact that there is doubt in our life, right? Nobody has 100% certainty about anything whatsoever. There will always be doubt. So we're going to have to sit with the fact that there is doubt. There is doubt in the world, and that is the way that it is. Okay? All right, Steve, I know that you're not your thoughts, right? But when I'm around churches and get blasphemous thoughts, I feel like it might come true. Any tips in this case? Steve, you say you feel like it might come true. I'm going to ask you, have any of them actually come true? Right? Steve, you're asking kind of the basic what if kind of experience, right? What if it were to come true? Now, Steve, I can't give you a 100% guarantee that something won't come true. But I can tell you, if it hasn't come true yet, what's the likelihood then that it will in the future? Okay. Now, could it? Sure. I can't tell you that something won't come true. I don't pretend to know everything about everything. So, but I would also say, Steve, there's probably other people who might have those types of thoughts and not be bothered by them at all. Which means there is another way to look at those types of thoughts as, oh, that was weird, or whatever, or oh, why did I think that? Who knows, whatever. And to be able to let those go. Because, Steve, I will tell you this. You're not the only person who's probably ever thought whatever blasphemous thought that you've had. But there are people who have had them who don't have OCD and therefore are just like, that was dumb, and can move on. Steve, the problem isn't a faith issue. It's an OCD issue. And for all of us, how do we let OCD go? How do we not let OCD be the driver and tell us as a judge and arbiter of everything that pops into our head that that is a good thought or a bad thought or a right thought or a wrong thought or a good image or a bad image or a right image or a wrong image or a good urge or a bad urge or a right urge or a wrong urge? Right? Because if OCD's going to do that, well, we're looking at a pretty horrible morality system if that's the case. I mean, think about it. If OCD ran the world, all of us would have to live in panic rooms. We need that to guarantee that we didn't harm anyone else, that we didn't molest anyone else, that we didn't cause a contamination to anyone else. We'd have to have a constant prayer system going on for you, Steve, to make sure that we are constantly bombarded with whatever higher power information we might need, right? If we did this, though, Steve, the society that we live in would die within 2 months because, well, not even that, because who would deliver water anymore? You couldn't put people working at the water filtration plant because, you know, what if somebody had an intrusive thought about what if I accidentally add something to the water and it hurts people? So no one delivers water anymore. And we know humans can live for about 4 or 5 days without water. So, Steve, society ends within a week if we were to do what I'm talking about. So instead, all of us live with guilt about something, right? And shame maybe about things and doubt about things. And it to me is a part of being a human. It just is, right? It just is. And maybe there's people who don't feel much guilt about things, but they still have doubt about things. And maybe they don't have a lot of fear of things, but they still doubt things, right? So the universal, I think, is doubt. We don't ever have 100% guarantee for anything. We may believe we do, but just because we believe we do doesn't guarantee it, right? So all of us have to sit with the discomfort of not ever knowing something 100%. Now you may say to me, but my OCD is so bad in this thing. I can live with a non 100% guarantee about anything but this one thing. To me, that's a hallmark way to identify that somebody has OCD when they tell me that. When I hear that, I'm like, oh, okay, you've got OCD. Right. That's just one of the standout things about obsessive compulsive disorder is that thing right there. So I hope that helps. Reminder, everyone, tonight's webinar brought to you by NoCD. Please download NoCD at nocd.com and utilize us for our teletherapy services. So hope all is well with all of you out there tonight. Let's go to a friend of mine, Pro Artistry. Hey, what's the difference between a compulsive behavior and OCD compulsion? Well, I personally only use the word compulsion when I'm talking about OCD. I think that anything else doesn't really meet the definition because according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, compulsion is something that we do to neutralize an obsession or in a very rigid kind of rule-bound way. So I think that it's probably better to talk about, say, impulsive gambling or shopping or things like that than compulsive shopping, because we don't do the compulsive gambling or shopping in relation to an obsession. We do it, I think, because there's a buildup of tension in us and there's joy and relief when we go do that thing, right? I've heard from people with kleptomania where it's like, oh man, oh, I could steal that. I could steal that. When they do, it's like, oh, that felt so good. That felt so good. Versus people with OCD, when they do a compulsion, don't necessarily talk about feeling so good, but they talk about the relief that they feel because the obsession is now neutralized. Subtle difference there, but I personally don't ever use the word compulsion outside of obsessive compulsive disorder. Elisa J, my OCD says, if you don't neutralize this thought, something bad will happen to a loved one, either today, tomorrow, in a year. How do I sit with this if I'll never be sure my thoughts won't cause action? Well, that would be thought action fusion. Now, oh, I don't have my wallet down here. I wish I did. In my wallet upstairs, and if any of you ever seen me at the OCD Foundation or have ever come to see me when I was working at Alexian Brothers, now Amita Health, because they still have intensive outpatient program and a partial hospital program, and the Foglia Family Foundation Residential Treatment Center, if you're at all looking for higher levels of care for OCD. But if you ever see me, and I have my work wallet with me, you ask me to look at the card in my wallet, and I'll pull it out, and you will notice that it says, I hope my parents die tonight, please God, and there's a 666 on the card as well, too. Now, I wrote that card probably 17 years ago now, because it would have been 15 years this year that I would have been at Alexian. So, yeah, it's probably 17 years ago when I was working at Linden Oaks. And I did that because I was working with somebody who had this very kind of thought, who's thought, if I think something bad happening to a family member, it will cause them the harm that I'm afraid will happen. So I wrote, I hope my parents die tonight. And then they were religious, so I wrote, please God, and I put the 666 on there for some extra flair as well, too. Now, that was 16 years ago. My parents are still alive. And so they will die, though. Let's just be honest. My parents are going to die. Not a fun topic, obviously, to talk about, but hey, my parents are human, therefore they are going to die. I in no way at all believe it's because of the card that I wrote. Because even if I hadn't written that card, they would die anyway, right? That card is not the thing that's going to make them die or not. So what you're dealing with here is this concept that we call thought action fusion, that a thought is just as bad as an action, right? So it would be like this. If everybody stared at your ceiling and thought about your ceiling collapsing on you, please do that right now for the next 10 seconds, but don't do any rituals or prayers or anything to neutralize it. I want you to really, really think, I want my ceiling to collapse on me. Let's see what happens. Let's all do it for the next 10 seconds. Go. I don't think it happened. Didn't happen to me. I'm not thinking it happened to you. So, I guess that I can't cause things to happen by my thoughts. Okay. Brittany says, how to overcome suicidal OCD. Well, I don't want to sound flippant, Brittany, but I'm going to tell you this. You've overcome it so far because you wrote that question, which means that you are still alive. And that shows you that though OCD has picked the topic of what if I were to hurt myself or kill myself, you have not yet done it. So congratulations, Brittany, because you're living your exposure and response prevention therapy already. You're able to sit with the thought of that thing happening and not do something about it. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. And I want you, Brittany, to continue to recognize the thought of that thing happening does not lead that thing to actually occur. That's what I want you to really recognize, Brittany, is that just because I think something doesn't make it true. It goes back to the ceiling thing, right? I thought the ceiling would collapse on me, but it didn't make it true. I could think that I can harm someone. It didn't make it true. I could think what I said earlier about running across the street and throwing a Molotov cocktail at my neighbor Dave's house. It so far has not made it true. So I don't really care what people think, right? What I'm concerned about is how they react to it. If your reaction to the thing that you think is, oh my gosh, that's awful and horrible, and I need to punish myself, and I need to neutralize, and I need to make sure that I don't ever do that, and I need to put all sorts of plans and parameters into place to not do that kind of thing. You could do that, but it's not the thing that helps you, right? If you think of something along the lines of a very basic idea of how we might think about this. Imagine at the top you have a fear stimulus, okay? And that fear stimulus occurs and it leads to a misinterpretation of a threat. And that makes me anxious or uncomfortable or guilty or shameful or disgusted or whatever. And so I do a safety-seeking behavior because I want to neutralize that thing right away. What do I learn? I learned that the safety-seeking behavior was the thing that helped me. So let me give you an example. I'll take it outside of OCD first. Charlie Brown and the Peanuts gang go to Great America. Great America is the Six Flags here in the Midwest area where I live. So Charlie Brown thinks, if I get on a roller coaster, I'm going to die. And that makes him anxious. So what does he do? He doesn't ride any roller coasters. Even though Linus and Lucy and Peppermint Patty and Snoopy are riding them, they're like, hey, come on, get on the roller coaster. Nope, not me. And what does Charlie Brown learn? I'm alive because I didn't ride any roller coasters. Now you could say, Charlie Brown, no one else died today riding any roller coasters. And his response will likely be something along the lines of, yeah, but had I gotten on it, that would have been the time something bad would have happened, right? I'm never going to talk Charlie Brown of being afraid of roller coasters if I just sit and talk to him all the time. And I'm also not going to get him to change how he feels about them by trying to convince him to feel differently about them. My best way to intervene in this situation is to get Charlie Brown on a roller coaster and show him that just because he thinks something bad might happen doesn't mean it's true or real. Now, I might need to find a motivator. And let's say at 5 in the afternoon, a little redhead girl taps on Charlie Brown's shoulder and says, hey, Charlie Brown, would you ride the roller coaster with me? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to, but we're going to die. So no, but yes. Oh God, what do I do? I could bring in the woman who designed the roller coaster and go over the blueprints with Charlie Brown. I could bring in the guy who built the roller coaster, and I can even give Charlie Brown a lug nut wrench and a lube gun. He could lube up all the joints and the wheels, and he could tighten up all the bolts. He's still going to be afraid of it. I could say to Charlie Brown, hey, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. It'll be okay. Not going to help. Charlie Brown's got to get on the roller coaster. And the first one might be frightening. And he might even be wary about doing it the second time. And that might be frightening, but he might be a little less wary about the third time. And by the end of the night, he might join the Roller Coaster Enthusiast of America Club, right? I mean, it's a possibility. He went from hating roller coasters to loving them. Why? Because he exposed himself to them and he learned that he could handle it. Now, does he always have 100% guarantee that he's going to be safe on a roller coaster? No, absolutely not. Do people get injured on roller coasters? Yeah, sometimes. So I can't tell you that you won't ever be harmed. I'm not going to tell you that. And do things happen to people? Sure. There's always chance, right? But no human is void of chance. We all live with uncertainty. And do we want to spend the rest of our life saying, you know, I don't want to go out and do anything because there's a chance something will happen. I'll never take a vacation because there's a chance that it could be a plane crash. I'll never drive anywhere because there's a chance I can get in a car accident. I'll never ride my bike anywhere because there's a chance I could hit a curb and fly over the handlebars, right? That's not I don't think a way that anybody really wants to live. It is a way OCD would probably like you to live, right? But do you want to live according to the values that OCD has, or do you want to live according to the values of what living your life would bring to you? And I'm hopeful that it would be the values that living your life would bring to you, not what OCD wants for you. So I hope that makes sense. Apple Scotch Pie says hello. Well, I mean, apple Scotch pie, that sounds wonderful. I could go for some pie. I love a little apple pie. Dutch apple pie is my favorite, but yeah, it's wonderful. JW says, problems with worrying about hitting someone in a car. Why do we check news, then see an accident and think we caused it? Well, simple answer, because you have obsessive compulsive disorder. That's why, right? But here's the other thing. There are people who also have OCD, who don't have OCD, who might also have that thought kind of pop into their head, and then just like, oh, that was dumb. Why the hell did I think that? I mean, why? Duh. Now, I've also had patients who have actually called the police on themselves and said, hey, I saw that there was a hit and run on the news, and though I didn't drive today, and though my car didn't match the description of the car involved in the hit and run, and though I've thoroughly checked my car and I see no damage on it, I think it could have been me. And the police come to their house. And one person was almost arrested for making a false statement to the police. Luckily, her mom was home and said, she has OCD, we'll be taking her to a therapist tomorrow. And then they came to see me. Right? So I would say this, JW, if OCD has picked that thing as the theme, then OCD is going to be looking out for that and then get you to wonder and doubt if it could have been you. So just know that that's the automatic response that OCD will have to that experience. But just because OCD has that automatic response doesn't make it true or real. Okay? I hope that helps. Andy says, how do you know when it's truly pure OCD and not traits of sociopathy? I can't stop worrying and thinking about it. Well, again, you're looking for a 100% guarantee here, Andy, and I can't give that to you, right? Now, if you find yourself having intrusive thoughts and doing mental compulsions, to me, that's a darn good sign that we're looking at, pure kind of OCD. That's what's happening, right? You're not doing behavioral compulsions, you're doing mental compulsions. So that to me would be what I would look at. And that's just what I would work with you on, is sitting with the discomfort that you might be a sociopath, right? Because that in and of itself could be the obsession that you're dealing with. What if I'm a sociopath? Huh? We'll have to sit with the discomfort of that, right? And see where we're at. Yeah. Sociopaths don't come to see me for therapy, but people with OCD who worry about being a sociopath very often come to see me. So that could be one thing too. Kaylee says, hey, Dr. McGrath, hope you're doing well after your surgery. Well, thank you, Kaylee. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's still not comfy, but getting better. So thank you, Kaylee. I appreciate that. Jenny says, can you ever recover from relationship OCD when I get my will I get my relationship back and feel how I felt before? Well, Jenny, I think you can, right? When you decide that OCD is not going to be the third wheel in your relationship, and that though those doubts are being bombed at you, right, from a mile away, just lofted in going, woo, maybe you're not attracted to each other the way you should be. You don't seem to hold hands as much as everybody else does. They don't seem as cute today as they were before. Making love last night was not as passionate as I thought it should be, right? And on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And you get yourself to recognize that has nothing to do with my relationship. That has everything to do with my OCD. Then I think you start to feel better about your relationships. Okay. Erica says they're going to Foglia's OCD program. Any advice? Awesome. Erica, my advice to anybody going into a higher level of care, and I'm so glad you're going to Foglia, Erica, because I started that place 4 years ago. So excellent choice. Foglia Family Foundation Residential Treatment Center. If any of you are looking for residential, and I know some of the other residentials that are more maybe well-known have long waiting lists, but if you want to get in quicker to a residential, we've got openings at Foglia. So please reach out to the Foglia Family Foundation Residential Treatment Center, part of Amita Health, AMITA Health. Erica, I would say this. Take full advantage of it. Do what you're asked to do. Make the challenges that you're asked to challenge. Sit with the discomfort and recognize that that is why you are there. You are not there to be comfortable. You are there to sit in discomfort and learn that you can handle being uncomfortable. Okay? That's what you need to do. I hope that helps. That's my best piece of advice that I can give anyone. There are times that people are going to ask you to do things in residential that you're like, I don't know that I can do that. Try it out. Give it a go. I'm going to bet that you can. JW says, Dr. McGrath, you're amazing. Well, thanks, JW. I'm glad you liked the answer that I gave there. Oh, wonderful. Josie says, false memory OCD has been the hardest theme for her because she just can't handle not knowing if you did or did not, even though logically I know I didn't. So here's the thing, Josie. As long as you hold on to that belief that says, I can't handle not knowing something, then false memory OCD will always have a hold on you, right? I wrote a little manual called Don't Try Harder, Try Different. And one of the themes in there I talk about is can't versus won't. And many people who are anxious will say, I can't handle it. And I've said to patients who have told me that, then, well, I don't know what to do with you then. I don't know how to help you if that's the case. And they look at me all disappointed. They're like, what do you mean you don't know how to help me? But I came here for help. And I said, yeah, I can help people who won't do something because they're afraid, but I don't know how to help people who can't do something. Because if you can't do it, it means you don't have the ability to do it. And if you don't have the ability to do it, I don't give abilities to people. You either have the ability or not. I can help strengthen and shore up abilities, right? But I can't give you an ability. That is a can't that I can't do. Right? So, Josie, I want you to recognize that you can handle not knowing if you've done something or not, but it feels as if you can't, right? But you absolutely can. Right? I can't even remember some of the things I did last week. I could not tell you last Tuesday everything that I did. I don't know if I went to the store or not that day. I have no clue. And I'm totally fine with that. So there is an ability, Josie, to be able to handle not knowing something. There are other people without false memory OCD who do it on a daily and even hourly, even minute by minute basis, right? You are not special, Josie. And I don't say that lightly. You are unique, right? But you're not special. The rules of the world don't apply to you differently than everybody else, Josie. It's not that everyone else in the world can handle this and you can't. You weren't selected of the billions of people on earth to be the person who cannot handle this thing. Your OCD's picked up on this and decided, well, this sounds like a great theme because this scares the bejesus bells out of her. So let's just keep reminding her that she might not know something. I hope that makes sense. I hope you kind of get that in this case. Right? Brooklyn says, how to find the right therapist without a diagnosis, or should I be diagnosed first? Well, how about this, Brooklyn? It never hurts to meet with a therapist and kind of go over your symptoms and see what's going on. And, don't be afraid to challenge therapists. I think everybody out here who's not in therapy, when you go to meet a therapist, you should make sure your therapist knows what they're doing. You should be able to ask them about, do you utilize exposure and response prevention therapy for OCD, or do you talk, right? Those kinds of things. So Brooklyn, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and reach out and meet with someone and even kind of test the waters with the therapist. And if they're not someone you're comfortable with, try someone else and see where you go. Check us out at NoCD if we might be able to be helpful to you as well too. Apple Scotch Pie, once again, hello, says harm OCD has convinced you that you're comparable to Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay, well that's way up there. These thoughts are very upsetting thoughts. How do I help myself in knowing that they're irrational? Well, there's a couple of ways we can go here. Boy, there's so much to unpack that I can't do tons of justice to it here on the webinar. But I would say that's definitely something that you can break down with a therapist. Now, Jeffrey Dahmer is well known for having done some pretty ridiculous things. And I don't want to go into too much detail on the goriness of what he did, but I think many of you know or can kind of look up if you're interested. But be wary if you're squeamish. Isn't it interesting that OCD could say to you, you are on the level of that for maybe a memory of something without any evidence whatsoever of the fact that that thing happened or not. Now, this just shows you the level that OCD can take things, right? OCD can compare you to anyone and get you to believe you are just like them, even in the face of zero evidence of support other than, but what if, right? And in the OCD world, you know what's enough to convict you? The phrase, but what if, is absolutely enough to convict you. So I want everyone to recognize this. You don't have to trust anything that OCD tells you, because OCD is a big, massive liar. I have not yet met anyone who has been told the truth by obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, if any of you have ever seen anyone that has been told the truth by OCD, please let me know. Please let me know. But I haven't met anyone yet who has been told the truth by OCD. So if you're one of those people, reach out to me. Kayla says, hey, Dr. McGrath, best advice for how to remember they're just thoughts and not to give them power. Glad you're okay. Well, thank you. Kayla. Oh, Kayla. Hi, Kayla. In terms of best advice, I would kind of look at this. First of all, if you have to keep repeating something over and over to yourself to remind yourself of something, pretty darn good indication of OCD going on there, I would say, right? Now, remember, OCD being the doubting disorder will get you to doubt any advice that you've been told already and question it and wonder, did I hear it right or enough or anything like that? Okay. Number two, when you don't find evidence to support what the thoughts are telling you, but you're afraid of what if, it's another great indication of sitting with just a thought and not giving it power. Number three, when something bombs you like that, recognizing, oh, wait, you know what? I've been bombed with this like on a daily basis. And so far, yeah, I've wasted a lot of time on it. Let's see what happens today if I don't waste any time on it and how the day goes. Well, look at that. Even without putting any time into it whatsoever, nothing happened at all. Fascinating. Another great indication that it is just a thought. So I hope that helps. Erica asked, any tips for skin picking? Well, Erica, there's a whole group of things that we do called habit reversal therapy. And now NoCD is starting to work with that as well, too. So Erica, please feel free to reach out to NoCD at nocd.com or on the app to hit that therapist button if you don't have one. And we can try to work with setting you up with someone who's now had training in habit reversal therapy as well, too. Laura says, I love to wash and clean my bedroom every day. Is this OCD or am I okay? Great question, Laura. Thanks for asking. Laura, if you just love to do it and it's your thing, there's no problem with that, right? But if, Laura, you have to do it because if you don't, you're afraid something bad or awful or horrible or uncomfortable or whatever might occur, and so you do it as a way to neutralize that, then it's obsessive compulsive disorder. So you really got to take a look at the causal effect. What's the reason behind the thing that we're doing? Daily Art Grind. Hey, welcome. You're usually here on a weekly basis. So my OCD keeps telling me I've done something inappropriate wrong over the last 12 years. I've been stuck in a cycle of checking memories and chat logs for months. I desperately need to stop, but how? Daily Art Grind. For the next 24 hours, I'd like you just not to check those things and see what it's like after that 24 hours of not doing that. Just keep in mind one thing here. Every check is, number one, a compulsion, and compulsions are the food of obsessive compulsive disorder. They are the eucalyptus of the koala world, okay? And so keep that in mind. And for all of you to keep a recognition of this too. There is evidence. We have actual studied evidence of the fact that the more we check things, the more we actually doubt them. So it turns out more checking is a hindrance and not a help. Because if more checking was a help, people with OCD would be the healthiest people in the whole world, because they do more checking than pretty much anybody else does. We've seen the opposite though, haven't we? Okay? Checking does not help. It is a hindrance. If you check more than one time and you start going down the OCD road, that might actually be playing more of a detrimental than a helpful effect to you and your experiences in your life. Sunshine 10 versus Sunshine 11. Hello, Sunshine 10. You were wondering if I have any advice on how to deal with OCD being obsessed on what happens after we die, rationalizing it, and the concept of forever, or any topic that is beyond our comprehension. Well, I would say this. There's no way to know what happens after we die until we die, unless you watch the movie Flatliners, where Julia Roberts and Kiefer Sutherland and several other people attempted to find out what happens after you die and then brought themselves back to life. But I'm not recommending that for anyone, by the way, so please don't go do that. This is the stuff of writing and philosophy and wondering and religion, and has only been debated, Sunshine 10, for maybe about 10,000 or so years or longer, as long as humankind has been able to kind of look up to the stars and see the vast out there and go, where am I in the universe? And what are all those things out there? And how the hell did I get here in the first place? And oh, suddenly Zoc died. He's from The Far Side. Zoc is one of my favorite people. If you're not familiar with The Far Side, check it out. Zoc died. Where did Zoc go? What happened? You know, we've given meaning to what happens after you die for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And we still don't have a universal understanding if there's anything out there or not. So it's hard to rationalize it, because how can you rationalize something that doesn't really have an answer, right? You will hear multiple groups say, well, my group has the answer. No, my group has the answer. No, my group has the answer. South Park once made fun of this, where they had a whole bunch of people outside the pearly gates of heaven, and there was all different religions, and they all had signs going, pick me, and St. Peter comes out and says, and then he announces the one that God picked, and all the other religions are like, oh, darn, and then they all go to the bad place, and the one religion goes in and like, woohoo, we won, right? And you can look that episode up if you want. It's very funny. I can't give you an answer about how to deal with something that's beyond comprehension, because I can't comprehend it. So here's what I do know, Sunshine 10. There's plenty of people out there who are okay with not knowing. There's also plenty of people out there who say, I do know, and they go with it. And it means that we can deal with it in a vast array of ways. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. Now, you might say, I want to be one of those people who feels like I know. But if you also have OCD, Sunshine 10, that you're going to have to accept that the doubting disorder won't ever allow for that necessary experience for you to make OCD go away and say to you, you do know 100%, because the doubting disorder doesn't accept anything at a 100% answer. So Sunshine 10, the answer is, I have to live with not knowing. I have to live with the doubt. Right. And I know that's uncomfortable. And I know that, boy, we hate doubt, don't we? It's not fun. But it is what it is. Michelle says, can OCD make me feel like something is wrong with me? I have pedophilic OCD and am married to a man. OCD makes me feel like something is wrong with me for not liking children, as if I should be. Yeah, I mean, OCD can definitely make you feel as if something's wrong with you. And I would say That is a massive thing that we treat all the time, because many people with OCD will show up and say, this is something bad about me or wrong about me. I want to stop this thing. Oh, I hear all the time, why do I have to have this thought? Why can't I have any other thought in the world but this one? This thought is unacceptable or gross or wrong or shameful or guilt-ridden or whatever it might be. That's what OCD does, right? It just is what it is. So yes, OCD is going to make you feel like there's something wrong with you and tell you to figure out how to make it right. But of course, it will never accept anything to make it feel right because it's OCD and it doubts everything. So you're just not going to get there. Jess says, is it important for us to have a therapist that has OCD as well so they can speak from experience? I don't think so, Jess, that's mandatory. I don't have OCD. I hope that as I speak to you all, I seem to understand it. In fact, I have said before, the highest compliment I've ever been paid is from someone who has OCD who said, I don't understand how you don't have OCD because you understand the way my brain thinks and you think like a person who has OCD and explain OCD to me in the way I experience my OCD. I was very proud of the fact that somebody thought that about me. So there's very good therapists out there who don't have OCD, who are amazingly helpful at treating people with obsessive compulsive disorder. Cherry wine. Na 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 na. If you're old enough, you know what that was. If not, look it up. All right. I'm scared of starting any new activity because I'm worried about changing what I do every day. Like if I transform my thoughts and actions, something bad will happen. My OCD tells me that. Yeah, well, your OCD can tell you all sorts of crap, but it doesn't mean that it's true or real. I mean, this is what I deal with on a daily basis. OCD telling people all sorts of garbage, but nobody as of yet being able to show me that it's true or real. I mean, it would fascinate me if just one time someone with OCD could tell me, you know what, that thing's really real. It is true. I just don't see it though. So, cherry wine, start all the new activities that you can and recognize that OCD is going to tell you those things, but it just doesn't mean anything because it's OCD and it's a big fat liar and it does what it does because that's what it does. But you don't have to believe it to be true. I have tinnitus. I always hear a ringing sound. If you've ever left a concert that was really loud and you have that ringing sound, imagine hearing that same sound for 20 years. I know none of you hear that. I know that it's all in my head, right? I don't try to convince you that it's true because you can't probably understand it the way that I do unless you have it. I could play the sound for you. I could find kind of the sound. In fact, I did find it once and I played it for someone. And it's funny, I said, is it playing? Because I couldn't hear it because it perfectly matched the sound that I hear. So I couldn't tell that it was playing because it was matching the sound that I have. And people were looking at me like, oh my God, shut that off, shut that off, shut that off. I've learned to live with a sound that annoys everybody else and not be annoyed by it whatsoever. You can learn to live with OCD in the same kind of way. Laura says, I have repetitive thoughts and thought behaviors in my head. Is this a form of OCD? Well, Laura, I would take a look at, are those thoughts intrusive? Or do you think that they may be inappropriate? Do they cause you a lot of anxiety or distress? And then do you do something to neutralize them? And if you do, then it could very well be OCD, and it might be worthwhile to reach out to a therapist to see if that's the case. Jamie says, hey, doc. Oh, wait, hold on. Jamie, I was with you, and then it jumped on me. So hold on. Let me go back. Sorry, Jamie. It does that once in a while. Let's see back where we were. Ooh, lots of you tonight. Hold on, everybody. There it is. Okay. Hey, doc. Could you please do a sample script pretending you're explaining to very conservative parents in easy to understand terms what OCD is? I deal with pure O. I don't know how to share my diagnosis. Jamie, if you are a member of NoCD, I just recorded an OCD education video that our therapists can send to members. And so you can ask your therapist to have that link sent to you and have your parents watch it. But I would say it's like this. Imagine something pops into your head that is the antithesis of anything that you stand for, or that you believe in, or that you would hope for or want. Most people would be able to go, that's weird, and move on from it. But some people, when they have obsessive compulsive disorder, react to that with a fear, a discomfort, a guilt, a shame, and feel like, why would I have that thought or image or urge? What if I wanted it? What if it were true? What if it were real? What if it means something? And wouldn't it be best just to make sure that I never experience that ever again, or that I did something to get rid of that so that I don't ever feel it anymore? And so you do a compulsion. And when you do that compulsion, you feel better. It feels like it's kind of floated away or it's gone. And now you're like, okay, great. And then you go on with your day. And then that thing pops into your head again. And so you're like, wait, well, I already know what to do to get rid of that. And you do that compulsion again. But remember, compulsions are the food of obsessive compulsive disorder. So the more compulsions we do, the worse OCD actually gets. Now, to the conservative parent, you might say, and this thought is a blasphemous thought. Let's just say that you have scrupulosity for a moment, right? And I'm not supposed to have this thought. So every time I have this thought, I have to neutralize it, because if I don't, I'll be punished. And OCD knows this, and OCD is like, oh, this is fabulous. I've jumped in to a religion that says this is an inappropriate or wrong kind of thing to think, and every time they do, they have to neutralize it. Built-in compulsion right there. Here we go. All right. If I'm on OCD, I'm on cruise control now. So guess what, conservative parents? As hard as this is going to be to accept, I need your child to sit with whatever that is and recognize that just because it's there doesn't mean I have to do anything to get rid of it or make it go away. Because the moment I give in to that is the moment I'm doing compulsions, and the moment that things will actually get worse instead of better. So what I'm asking you to do is this. I want you to allow your kid to sit in discomfort and learn that though uncomfortable, they can handle it. And that's going to be the thing that's going to lead that inappropriate or blasphemous or whatever thought to fade away on its own. But the more you try to get rid of it, the worse it gets. Parents, guess what? If I tell you, don't think of a pink elephant, have no pink elephant thoughts whatsoever, what do you think of, parents? Well, I thought of a pink elephant. Yes, you did, right? And if I keep telling you not to think of a pink elephant, you're going to keep thinking. And if I keep telling you not to think of whatever thought that is, you're just going to keep thinking of it. But if I teach you to sit with the fact that though a pink elephant thought pops in your head doesn't mean that you need to do anything about it, eventually that pink elephant's going to fade away and it's not going to be there anymore. And it's the same with any other thought or image or urge as well, too. And that would be the way that I would really work with people who are conservative, who don't really get it, to try to truly understand what it is that's going on with obsessive compulsive disorder. Well, everyone, you've spent another night with me. That was a fast hour. I hope that this was helpful to everybody. It was a pleasure to be back with all of you again, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Our buddy Paul Melia, our theme song writer from Ireland. Woo! Go Irish people. Yay. Thank you, Paul. We're going to take it out with Paul's song here. Right? Hold on to the colors. Check out Paul Melia online. Thanks, Paul, for the work you've done. And Paul, for the work you've done in the OCD community, in addition to the music community as well, too. It's been a blast being with all of you tonight. Have a good one.